Hello, my name is Alexis Tindall and I'm the Manager of Digital Innovation at the University of Adelaide Library. I'd like to thank the VALO organisers for allowing me to pre-record this presentation and participate in this year's conference remotely. And in opening, I would like to acknowledge the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the land upon which I live and work, and where I'm recording this today. I acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and respect and value their past, present and ongoing connection to land and cultural beliefs. Recognising that this conference is broadcast to many locations across Australia and other places, I'd like to extend that respect to any traditional custodians whose lands are represented here today. In opening, I just wanted to share this quote from Anne McKenney and Nancy McGovern's 2003 paper, The 5 Organisational Stages of Digital Preservation. Although most institutions recognise that digital preservation is a growing concern, too few have concluded that the problem is theirs. As someone who has spent 15 years in the galleries, libraries, archives and museums sector, with more than half of that time having a digital focus, I recognised this sentiment very well. I joined the University of Adelaide in April 2020, when that organisation was poised mid-pivot from perhaps the first clause in this sentence to the second, teetering on the comma, if you will. In today's presentation, I'll share our pathway towards improved digital preservation at the University of Adelaide Library. I'll make special reference to how the Digital Preservation Coalition membership and their rapid assessment model helped us tether the massive challenges, unknowns, and varying degrees of enthusiasm into an actionable roadmap. And in closing, I'll update my published paper with our progress over the last 6 to 9 months. In 2015 and 16, the University of Adelaide Library embarked on a radical process to consider the next 20 years of the library. This resulted in the Library of the Future report, which you may be familiar with. With the appointment of a transformational university librarian, the recommendations from that report guided a reconceptualisation of the physical spaces and organisational structure of our library, the balance between physical and digital resources, and the skills of our staff. The report specifically considered the responsibilities of the library in contributing to the digital literacy of our students and researchers, our role in managing and sharing research data, and made a seismic shift towards our digital-first approach. The 2019 to 2021 Beyond the Library of the Future strategic plan drew a line under a period of rapid and dramatic change and set out our principles and priorities for the future. With reference to the Kenny and McGovern quote that I opened with, this was the time when the library not only concluded that digital preservation was our concern, but steeled ourselves to do something about it. From my vantage point here in 2022, having developed and published our digital preservation strategy, I can see a direct correlation between the themes that were defined in that strategic plan: information management, skilled and innovative staff, quality resources and systems, and proactive partnerships, and what is needed for successful digital preservation. But I'll go into a bit more detail over the course of this presentation. The University of Adelaide Library supports students and staff with the supply of physical and digital resources, services and spaces, just like any university library does. Our library also manages special collections, university archives, rare books and manuscripts, and art and heritage collections. We manage university record keeping and our institutional repositories, storing and providing access to things like theses, scholarly publications, grey literature, as well as research data. This breadth of collections means that we are managing an extraordinary and growing mix of digital collections. In early 2020, the library recruited a manager of digital innovation, me, whose responsibilities would specifically include leading digital preservation initiatives to support the library's unique collections in collaboration with other library teams, and identifying and assessing emerging technologies and tools for various things, including digital preservation. And in March 2020, we became the 100th member of the Digital Preservation Coalition, an international membership organisation that works to secure the world's digital legacy. This announcement coincided with the establishment of the DPC Australasia office, which was supported by the University of Melbourne. So commitments had been made and documented. We were ready to act, but what to do? A small cross-team stakeholder group gathered to inform and collaborate on the development of a strategy. This team brought together representatives of the Special Collections, Archives and Record-keeping teams, the Academic Liaison team, and was led by our Associate Librarian. We commenced an internal review to try and establish the current state. We wanted to look at best practice as implemented in like organisations and review our responsibilities with regard to university policy and the law. Our intention was to find a starting point, a thread to pull, if you will. This proved harder than we thought. The breadth of data types in our collections, the fact that we weren't even sure how many or which business systems were primarily our responsibility, the breadth of legal and policy determined responsibilities of the library all quickly became overwhelming. Dispersed responsibilities for different systems and a lack of centralised documentation made it quite difficult to capture an understanding of the scope of the challenge that we were facing. We found it hard to pinpoint where our responsibilities ended. As information management professionals, we were familiar with and highly concerned about the extraordinary amount of digital university material that existed outside of our control. Things like shared drives, collaborative tools, locally established network drives, and the dreaded portable hard drives in the many bottom drawers throughout the institution. We were concerned about the blurry lines of responsibility between the library and our Information Technology and Digital Services, or ITDS team. And we were acutely aware of how limited our influence was over the research and teaching colleagues who were creating these digital assets. We found ourselves paralysed by a seemingly unending stage of discovery. In July 2020, the stakeholder group asked me and the business archivist, Susie van der Sluis, to assess the library's digital preservation maturity using the DPC rapid assessment model. This tool is designed to support rapid benchmarking of an organisation's digital preservation capability. Users can rate themselves against a simple and concisely described set of maturity levels across 11 organisational and service capabilities, everything from organisational governance, policy and strategy, through IT capability to acquisition and transfer processes, bitstream preservation, metadata management, and discovery and access. Digital Preservation Coalition members are encouraged to reassess themselves every year, sharing their results back to the coalition, who then aggregate those results and present them to members at an annual Connecting the Bits conference, which is a nice opportunity for members to ascertain their progress against relevant peer organisations. Drawing on the information that the stakeholder group had already gathered, Susie and I were pretty much able to complete this assessment in a single sitting. So it was rapid benchmarking. This radial graph captures our initial assessment, with our current state in the centre and the target levels that we were seeking defined by the outer red line. We presented this to the stakeholder group, and one member astutely and promptly asked, well, what can we do to move that centre line? With that, the visualisation became a driver for action. This reminded us of the breadth of activities necessary for successful digital preservation. It informed our priorities, helped us set targets that were relevant and appropriate for our institution, and significantly accelerated strategy development. It didn't answer all of our questions for us, don't get me wrong. Some of the thorny ones that we had encountered that were specific to our situation definitely remained. I mentioned our unending process of discovery, our ever-growing area of concern. How are we going to define the boundaries of our responsibilities? The rapid assessment model actually asks people to set a 12-month target level, and the group discussed whether that was really the best horizon for our organisational strategy to be working towards. And really, how would the dire state of higher education funding and capacity due to the COVID pandemic affect our ability to implement this strategy? During the period in question, the library workforce had a significant reduction thanks to rounds of voluntary and targeted redundancies. Could we really consider acquiring and implementing a digital preservation system in that kind of environment. We addressed a couple of these issues head on in the strategy objectives. How far does the reach of the strategy extend? We indicated that initially our focus would be the digital information that was clearly under the control of the university library. Elsewhere, we've defined our area of concern as resources that were of continuing value. So interpreting that for you, for practical purposes, we are at present unconcerned with material on shared drives managed by RTDS, on computer desktops, on the portable drives in those bottom drawers or locked filing cabinets. And similarly, we are talking about unique digital material for which we are responsible. So not the electronic resources managed by publishers that we license and distribute for our community. We are concerned primarily with digital material of continuing value. While our record keeping role sees us managing huge born digital document collections, the administrative records of the university, we are actually pretty good at collection management already. We can care for those things that are due for disposal after just a few years pretty well. But we really need to focus our attention for the purposes of this strategy on those things that we want to preserve and, where appropriate, make accessible for the longer term. And finally, you can see the pragmatic recognition of our limits in terms of resources and influence with terms like progressively implemented, a desired level of maturity, and to provide a reference document for discussing digital preservation with the wider university. The roadmap is outlined in 3 presently undated phases, which is a recognition both of our immaturity in deciding how long these things are going to take and our realistic concerns about resourcing in the current environment. The strategy references our DPC RAM results and commits us to annual reassessment. This will help us measure progress as the roadmap unfolds. It's divided into 3 sections: governance and policy environment, people, and asset management. And each section sets out the sort of why, how, when, what, and who of those aspects. I'm not going to go step by step through the strategy and roadmap. It is published online and Creative Commons licensed, so feel free to take a look at that URL at your leisure. But I will give a high-level overview of the sections. Governance and policy environment. This theme works towards an enabling and responsible environment for quality digital preservation. It establishes our library digital preservation working group, which has the oversight of the roadmap implementation. The section also documents the legal and policy environment in which we're working and describes efforts to align with relevant community standards. Importantly, actions in this section define and document the environment in which all other actions are delivered. People. The actions in this section call for training and upskilling staff and for the library to engage with and contribute to the wider digital preservation community. That second part is a direct acknowledgement of the value that we found in our relationships with the Digital Preservation Coalition and the Australasia Preserves Network. Importantly, when we talk about upskilling staff, we aren't just talking about training those staff who have direct responsibility for digital resources, but we're specifically talking about raising awareness and familiarity with the issues broadly, with a view of cultivating and nurturing organisation-wide support. At this stage, the library has dedicated no new resources to this initiative apart from a portion of my time. We need to find this capacity and reprioritise existing technical and human resources to achieve the implementation of this roadmap. Success will depend upon well-informed and motivated managers supporting the review and improvement of existing processes, redirecting their limited staff resources to contribute to this process, and supporting the upskilling and changes to work plans of existing staff. This section aims to make all library staff alert to digital collections and their risks, to improve the skills of those who are responsible for implementing preservation, and to empower senior management as decision makers and potential advocates for preservation. In practical terms, this involves relevant staff completing the DPC Novice to Know-How course, awareness raising through the whole of library staff through our program of Did You Know sessions, which the library uses to share information across teams, and to create our own workshop materials for targeted staff inside and outside the library who could be alert to at-risk collections. In later phases, this section describes the integration of digital preservation advice into existing library support services for the research, teaching and learning community. Asset management, the actual digital things. This third section describes improving processes across our existing collection management activities to effectively manage the collection management lifecycle of digital information of continuing value. Phase 1 sees us documenting existing processes and exploring opportunities for improvement. So making sure that we're making the best use of our existing tools. Phase 2 sees these improvements embedded in workflows, while phase 3 aims to prepare the university library for the next roadmap, which may include the implementation of a digital preservation system. So where are we up to? The strategy and roadmap was endorsed by the library leadership team in July 2021 and published online. The disappointing but very sensible delay of VALA this year means that we're further into the process of implementation than we would have been had the conference happened in February. And it gives me a chance to update on how we're going. We've established our digital preservation working group, bringing together relevant mid to senior level staff across special collections, archives, record keeping, digital access, library applications team, and importantly, university ITDS. We have started rolling out the Novice to Know-How training that the Digital Preservation Coalition makes available with relevant staff. All members of the working group have completed the course, and in the first half of 2022, most of the special collections and record keeping teams will have done it. Digital access will be next off the block, with remaining staff receiving a lighter weight upskilling program. Many of our phase 1 actions were focused on information gathering. Using the DPC's rapid assessment model and the NDSA levels of digital preservation framework, I, with the help of the working group, created a survey of approximately 40 questions to ask of the 7 business systems for which we are responsible. These systems manage an extraordinary range of data, much of which is of continuing value. The survey documented things like existing storage and backup arrangements, processes and documentation related to decision-making, acquisition and ingest, things like alignment with the OAIS principles, integrity checking tools, and how users are accessing the content managed by these systems. It was no small piece of work, and it involved input from business system managers, ITDS, and vendors. Our intentions were multifold: getting a better handle on existing processes and procedures, uses of metadata and the like, identifying opportunities for improvements within existing tools, human resources and processes, and considering whether our existing infrastructure could, with intervention, be closer aligned to the OAIS framework. And we've come to the end of this initial information gathering process. This is actually a tricky stage to be, because we have to ask ourselves, of all of these things we've learned, what do we act on first? Even collecting and sharing the results of the surveys amongst the rest of the working group has been a huge piece of work. A really quick overview of some of the significant steps forward that this has enabled. We are aware that we actually can't get much closer to an OAIS compliant environment without either the implementation of a preservation system or increased technical resources. We have a much improved understanding of where our data is stored and detailed information about how ITDS supports us by backing it up. We have reconceptualized how we manage lab archives, which some other university libraries may also be responsible for, and are reviewing our engagement around it, making efforts to integrate it better with our research data management systems, as despite the name, it is not an archive, but has been used as such. We've documented the university policies that these systems support and the legal responsibilities of the library with regard to this content. And importantly, and one of the trickier things we've sort of learned about and documented is where we're using metadata standards, where we have options for controlled vocabularies, how much control over we have over those and how we're using them, and where we have documented ingest processes. We've also looked at where systems are linked together using APIs or other means, and the processes around that handling of our assets, which is leading to a lot of recommendations and a lot of work. The working group is presently considering options for our next steps. The things on the to-do list include a gap analysis of metadata processes with a particular focus on preservation metadata. We need a digitisation policy and procedure to make use of the best use of the digitisation resources that we have available and tackle one of our hardest challenges, which is how we manage donations of born digital manuscript collections. We want to accelerate our progress towards a business case for a preservation system. We have a much better understanding of our digital collections and their needs, and in 12 months' time, we'll be much better placed to argue for such a system and work with potential suppliers. And one more thing. I mentioned the need to motivate and empower our existing team and our disinterest in things like portable hard drives and bottom drawers. It turns out that this visible organisational commitment to improved management of our digital assets and clearer lines of responsibility has motivated our existing team already, and has also uncovered our own bottom drawers and filing cabinets full of CDs and USBs, with side projects springing up all around us. Two significant ones that I'd like to mention. We've done a comprehensive audit of our audio-visual holdings in our special collections, including film, VHS, audio cassettes, CDs, U-matic tapes, multi-track masters, and odd bits of digitised or digital content dispersed on shared drives. As they captured it, the staff that were working on this project documented the significance and condition of the items, whether they contained Indigenous content, and created a recommendation framework for digitisation. We've also committed to consolidating our dispersed print and digital thesis collection, especially unknown part of our collection that landed in our custody in the years when the university transitioned from print thesis submission to digital thesis submission. This is a project that has reared its head repeatedly over the last 5 or 6 years, and now a small working group has been meeting regularly, a working group that includes me, meeting regularly to resolve this issue and meets quarterly to work through this multi-layered challenge. So in closing, I would like to revisit the Kenny and McGovern quote, both in establishment and implementation of the actual roadmap, and in the associated benefits of the projects that are emerging alongside it. I think what I've presented is a portrait of an organisation that has not only become aware that the concern of digital preservation is ours, but has tackled that challenge with both hands. We haven't resolved it yet. We are not yet a model of good digital preservation practice, but we are on that pathway and making it happen. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I look forward to discussion.
Hear me? Yes. Oh, good.
Yes.
We do have a couple of questions. Please keep those questions coming in on the app. So, great preparations. Do you see phase 2 rolling out the digital preservation? And does the university still have the funds?
With the university, no. So, no, look, one of the things is funding is always a matter of priorities. I'm a bit of an optimist. I always think when someone says there's no funds that it can be found for the right reasons. So before we started this, we were in no position to make a business case for acquiring any kind of system. But with what we know now, we are a lot further along and we can make a stronger argument for it. We're also monitoring the landscape for opportunities, things that have popped up just actually in recent weeks, even perhaps since I recorded that presentation. Our ITDS department is doing a technology strategy process looking at what they'll need to acquire in the next 2 to 3 years. And so we went, we've got an idea. Similarly, our division of academic and student experience has a roadmap so we're just being more alert to those opportunities that exist outside the existing library resources and how we might be able to do that. I went into this open-minded about whether we needed a preservation system or not. The thing that pushed me over the edge into going, perhaps we do need a preservation system, is that our existing systems are not very good at managing archival masters, which was an important part of the OAIS framework that we were not fulfilling. So we could use the existing integrity tools as we liked. We could look at open source tools that would complement our collection management systems, but unless we had a better management of the retrievable assets, that was going to be one of the sticking points. So that's where we're seeing. I realised as I was listening, I didn't mention why we need a preservation system, but I don't think it's necessarily the answer for everybody, but I think it's something we will be heading towards.
Great. What advice do you have for, say, as perhaps a smaller organisation just getting started with a digital preservation project? Are there any quick wins?
Well, one of the things that I'm seeing as a bit of a win, well, maybe it might not be such a concern for a smaller organisation, but we have 7 collection management systems, and they've all proliferated for different purposes managed by different teams, and we haven't had that opportunity to look at them as a whole. And one of the things that essentially a member of our working group and I are sitting down right now is looking at existing metadata that we use, and each of those systems has their own minimum metadata set. And so we're trying to work out whether we actually have an organisation-wide minimum metadata set that we would apply to all of our systems. The other thing is looking at if you do have backups. So this is a tricky area. So if you have, your collection may be managed somewhere, thinking about assets that you might need to keep for the very long term, either because they're of, say, enduring cultural heritage value, or in our case, we have a legal responsibility to keep certain kinds of metadata forever, is sort of following that object on its life cycle. So where it's seeing whether there are any risky stages, either in acquisition, in how you're documenting it, or in how you turn over your backups if it's something that happens every year or every 7 years or something like that. So that was a pathway that I'm interested in exploring, and might be something you could do at a smaller system. I'd also have a look at the DPC rapid assessment model. It's easy to find if you Google search it. It's just a really quite simple framework to go, and a really good reminder and cultural change tool to look at, to remind people that it's not all just about the assets. It's also about the enabling environment.
I don't think there are any more questions. Has anybody?
I was worried we'd have too short a time for questions. I think my email address. I think my email address is on the screen if anybody does want to follow up with me, and on the Adelaide University Library website, our strategy is available.
Yeah, you are filling the screen right now.
Oh, sorry.
Here it is, though. They've put it back up there. Well, thanks very much, Alexis. Everybody, put your hands together once again.